Hi, my name is Aspen Bassett, author of the soon-to-be-published novel, The Crimson Clover, and most importantly, avid romance consumer. This is my cat. She has a lot of opinions, and she's refusing to speak right now because she doesn't like being on camera. But today we are going to talk about the 6 scenes that change a simple love story into an epic romance. Now, I bet that you have, if you're like me, you've consumed a lot of romance stories, whether it's in Hallmark films, cozy romance novels, anything like that. And there are some that just hit you, that are just like, oh, these are going to haunt me forever. They're absolutely amazing. And then my cat hates me when I talk. So that's great. I can just cover myself up in blankets and talk to you that way. But there might be some romance stories that just kind of, you know? They could have hit, but they didn't really. And can't really put your finger on why. Well, I think I know why. So this is why I had to become an author, because all I do is think about this stuff all the time, and I do research, and a lot of this research was that I found that I find actually useful was done by the StoryGrid editor. You can look him up. But there are 6 scenes that are absolutely vital to a romance novel or a romance story of any kind, and a lot of them people get. A lot of them are the basics of the romance. This is what makes a romance. But there's one scene in particular that is very often forgotten about. And we're going to go through them and we're going to talk about that together. So the very first scene that you have to have for a romance novel or any kind of romance story is the lovers meet. They have to meet eventually. It doesn't have to be the very beginning. It can happen way deeper into the story, and the story can still be interesting. A great example of that is The Lake House, with Sandra Bullock and Keanu Reeves. They don't meet until the very, very end of the story, and they just communicate through letters for the entire movie, and it works. But they do have to meet eventually because it's a romance story. Then you have to have the first intimate moment. Most of the time, this is the first kiss, right? You gotta have the first kiss. Or if it is a more chaste romance, it might be the first time he patted her head, or it could be the first time they held hands. In the movie Flipped, which I think was a book first, it is a hand holding. That's the epic scene. In Pride and Prejudice, actually, it is the first dance. It is significant because Elizabeth had turned down his attempts at dancing with her in the past. He has made it very publicly known that he does not like dancing. So the scene is more intimate than any other dance scene within the books, because he is not asking to dance. He is asking to dance with her. Good stuff. It's intimate. It's vulnerable. It's why we're here, right? All right. 3. We've got the confession of love. It's a romance story. You have to have the scene where they address actually having feelings for one another. Silly. Gotta have that moment. I think the author, Alyssa Cole, writes a fantastic love confession scene. She does a whole bunch of books. She does romance, she does graphic novels, and she does thrillers. I love her romance. I have not read her thrillers yet. I want to. I haven't been in a spooky mood lately, but I will. I will read them because I love her as an author. But her romances, I consumed those epically, and she does a very good love confession scene. I think Alyssa Cole is a fantastic author. You should find her if you haven't. I'm sure you do. She's amazing, and she's won a whole bunch of awards. But then next, you've got the lovers break up or separate for somehow scene. We need to have this scene to establish the value at stake when the couple part ways. So why do we want them to be together is shown in what happens to them when they're apart, if that makes sense. An excellent example of this is the Percy Jackson books. I will die on the hill that Percy Jackson is romantic as hell, Rick Riordan writes a romance unlike so many other authors. He knows what it's about. And Percy and Annabeth's romance is epic scale. It deserves to be up there with all the other Greek tragedies, the Roman love stories. It's not a tragedy yet. I hear he's writing more, so we'll see. Hopefully it doesn't become a tragedy. But there's a scene in one of the series where Percy Jackson loses his memory. He loses everything. He's completely separated from every thread of his life before, and the only thing he can remember is Annabeth's laugh. We see how them being separated affects him and how much he cherishes her. And when they get back together, we've got that horrible cliffhanger, literally, scene where he chooses to literally fall into a hellish pit. That is Tartarus, to avoid being separated from her again. The risks at stake of separating from her, even temporarily, is greater than literally falling into torturous, hellish Tartarus. So that he experienced it. He's not for it. He would rather go to hell than experience it again. And that is amazing. That shifted the Percy Jackson and Annabeth romance into a cute, fun love story, into one of the most epic tales of romance that I have ever read. So that's fun and exciting. But yeah, you have to have the lovers break up or separate somehow scene. It really establishes the risk at stake, why it's worth fighting for them to be together. It creates an emotional investment in the audience, which we got to have that emotional investment. The romance tales are all about the emotional expression. It's a very emotional genre. And so you have to have that at stake. And it needs to be established, it needs to be powerful, and then the story's going to be epic. All right? Then 5, if you separate the lovers, you have to bring them back together again. You have to have that scene where they reunite, whether it's a tragedy where everybody dies at the end, or it's a comedy where you end up in a freaking wedding at the end. The characters, the lovers, have to reunite somehow in some way for however brief of a time. I watched one thing where they literally saw each other. That was it. They saw each other in passing, and you had this moment where they had this connection and understanding of what was going to happen and everything, and then parted ways, tragedy. Pretty much blocked that story out of my head because it was very emotional and they created the investment. And then they didn't give me a happy ending, which fills me with rage personally. So I can't tell you what it was called, but you did have that moment where they reunited and they had a moment before they were torn apart again. So you have to have that scene. And okay, number 6 is the most epic one. This is the one most often forgotten about, I would say personally, in all of my years of researching the genre of romance. This is the scene that is most often forgotten, or it's downplayed. It's not epic enough. I don't know. It's a scene that's very often just slid past or not even completely written. And if you walk away from a book or a movie or TV show or a manga or anything like that, and you kind of felt it was cute, but it wasn't it just kind of was what it was. It's probably because they forgot the scene. Most times, not 100% of the time, but most times it's going to be because they forgot the scene. And I'm actually very interested in, once you finish this video, if you go back to a story or recall a story that you were meh, it was fine, and see if they had this scene, and then comment in the video and let me know, because I'm very deeply curious. But anyway, the scene is the proof of love. Very, very important. People always skip it because they think that the declaration of love, the confession of love, is the same thing as the proof of love, but it's not. It is completely different, and it adds so much spice to the book. Now, the thing that separates it is that the thing that separates the proof of love from the confession of love is the fact that the person proving the love, the person taking action in that scene, does not intend for the other person to know about it, nor do they expect any type of return from it. Example of this, there's so many examples that are amazing and epic, and they're all in like the stories that everybody knows because everybody knows they're just so epic. It hits you different. It's what causes something to go viral, like one of those romance stories that just everybody needs to watch it, everybody needs to read it. It's got this scene in it. In Pride and Prejudice, when Darcy saves Lydia from disgrace and pays for her marriage to protect Elizabeth and her family's reputation. He does not intend for Elizabeth to find out about it. He actually goes out of his way to make sure she doesn't find out about it because he does not want anything from it. He is doing it to protect her, not to get her. That's what seals the deal. That's what makes Darcy so epic from all the other love stories out there. The fact that he took that action without any expectation of return. Another example of this that I have seen very recently is the Destined with You kdrama. Say what you will about kdrama. I personally will never say anything bad about it. It is a love story that hits all the points for me. I am obsessed with it. It's very quickly became a comfort TV show for me. But it actually has multiple scenes that include proof of love. It just is throughout the show. And yes, I am including the scene where he stabbed her in a past life. Things get complicated, but that was a proof of love. He at no point was expecting any sort of return. How can you? You killed her. But there's everything he does afterwards. We find out that he did a lot of things afterwards for her next life and in preparation for her next life, so that she could be happy and to have her power back. And that is an act of love and without any type of return. But in Destined with You, there are other examples of it as well within the modern life. For example, when he finds out that she's about to get fired. It has nothing to do with her performance. It has nothing to do with anything. It is a petty power play on another woman's part, and he decides to take action. But instead of telling her about the situation, instead of stressing her out for no reason when she doesn't have power over it, and she needs to feel at this point in time, she needs to feel supported, not antagonized. So he takes her out on a fun day in town. They do things together. He gets her away from the situation so that the boss can't find her to fire her, and handles the situation. He never expected anything out of it. But to the audience, we know, oh, this guy really does love her. He is willing to do things without wanting a return. And that's beautiful. That changes a cute little romance to an epic love story. Another example of this is The Hating Game by Sally Thorne. That is a really good love story. I enjoy it. I have read it multiple times. And one thing that really upped it to me was what he does to make sure that they are no longer competing for the promotion. It is an enemies to lovers romance, and they're coworkers. They're both vying for the same promotion, and he takes initiative in making sure that they no longer have to worry about that. But he does not tell her about it until it becomes irrelevant. He does eventually tell her, but you can't not tell her in the situation. He holds it back and he makes sure that nobody else tells her until it is no longer relevant to the situation, because he doesn't want it to influence her choice. Proof of love. It was epic. It was good. It gave the story more oomph, and it became not just a cute little love story. It became an epic romance. And then I have to address my all-time favorite romance, If you've been following me for a while, if you know anything about me, you know I'm about to say The Scarlet Pimpernel. I'm obsessed with The Scarlet Pimpernel. It's my favorite book, it's my favorite movie, it's my favorite musical. And one of the reasons is because proof of love is very much ingrained in their scenes. Both characters in the book, the original book of The Scarlet Pimpernel, both characters have a proof of love scene. It's near the end, when, and yeah, I'm going to give spoilers. I've been giving spoilers throughout. So, near the end, Marguerite risks everything to cross the French border, from the English to the French border, in order to save him. She's hoping to get to him in time. She doesn't tell him. She doesn't do anything. She is just trying to stop the people who are after him. And, you know, because this is written in the early 1900s and our lovely female author had to do some things in order to get the book published, there are some changes to the ending. I feel like she would have been a much more epic hero at the end if she had been left to her own devices as an author, but that's my own personal rant. I'll save that for another video. But then she finds out that the only reason he had even crossed the French border was to, when the entire French government was after him, is to protect her brother. He was doing it as an act of love, a proof of love, without really intending for her to ever find out. So yeah, you have to have that proof of love scene. So next time you are hanging out with your friends and you watch a holiday romance movie or a K-drama or read a cozy romance book this holiday season and you're chatting with your friends about it later, you can be like, I know exactly why this story hit just right. Or you can be like, you know what would have made this scene better if they had remembered the proof of love scene? Sucks to be them.